giant squirrel, what the hell? Oh my God, what is...
So this is my brand new Yozma IN10 Pro. This is the 60 volt model with the 5500 watt powertrain, bigger wheel set, longer front suspension fork, longer swing arm, bigger battery, better controller, whatnot. And today we're gonna be modifying it. And yes, this bike has like 20 miles on it, but I can't wait to see how it performs as a 72 volt. Please excuse all the mud covering the bike. We were just riding trails this week and this thing's been a blast riding off-road, especially with the beefier suspension, 1714 wheel set, and the bigger brakes. It's also got beefier calipers. But as far as the powertrain, I gotta say the torque down low is a little bit underwhelming for the size of the bike, especially coming from a 70 mile an hour, 14 kilowatt Yozma. It's just kind of left me itching for just a little bit more power. So we're gonna be tuning this thing today. The first thing we're gonna do is remove the stock 60 volt battery, since we're gonna be replacing that with a 72 volt. And the stock battery max power output is 80 line amps. And the stock controller is already tuned for 80 line amps continuous. So the power output with the stock battery is already maxed out from factory. So I don't really see the point of trying to tune the stock controller for more power with the stock battery in place. Just two 10mm bolts holding the bracket. And that's it. This is my Amorge 72 volt 30 amp hour lithium battery pack. I've got the 50 PL cells in here with an amp BMS. Peak output is 360 amps, which means this battery can support over 25,000 watts of power output for 10 seconds. Then it tapers down to a max continuous discharge of 300 amps, which means it's able to maintain over 21,000 watts of power. I actually ordered this for my smaller Yozma since I've got the Socian motor on there, Moxon motor, and I'm tuning it for 900 phase amps. We needed this battery to supply it with enough power to go 80 miles per hour. We've only been able to hit 70 miles per hour with the 20 amp hour battery. And then this is the matching discharge connector, which came with it. This is a QS10S. I've never actually had a battery that has a connector this huge. Also came with a 84 volt max output, so 5 amp 72 volt charger. Now this battery is meant specifically for a Yozma IN10 or a Voltinzo EM5. They should be the same dimensions. Happens to have the same exact height as the stock battery, same width and same thickness. Actually, dimensions are super similar overall. I'm surprised that they're able to fit 30 amp hour of capacity in such a small frame like this. It does feel significantly heavier than this battery though, so I know it's got a lot in it. Now we're just gonna be test fitting it on the Yozma IN10 Pro for now, just to get an idea of how much power this thing can actually put out with the stock controller. One thing it's definitely gonna improve by a long shot is the range. Before we put the new battery in, we gotta install the matching discharge connector though, which is bolted directly on the Fardriver controller. So we're gonna have to take some of these plastic covers off and lower the controller. Actually, after taking a closer look, we shouldn't need to take the plastic shroud off since I'm able to reach all 4 of the Allen bolts holding the controller in place. Excuse all the noise. I think there's a dump truck right outside my garage right now. I'm at least gonna take the fender off just to get that out of the way. Now you don't have to fully remove the controller to swap out the battery connector. We just have to get enough slack to take this plastic cover off and unscrew the positive and negative terminals. So I'm just gonna disconnect the main harness from the Fardriver controller just to get a little bit more slack. Again, we're just disconnecting 2 terminals, the negative and the positive connectors for the battery. Don't forget to reconnect the tiny red and black wires on the same posts when you install the new connector. That's what powers up the 12 volt accessories such as the tail light and whatnot. I believe those go to the voltage step down converter. Just got to disconnect the XT60 connector from the charge port and then fish the battery harness through the top. And here's a closer look at the new battery connector that we're putting on this controller temporarily. Look at the size difference on the power wires. That just gives you an idea of how much power the new battery is able to put out, at least when it's combined with the proper controller and motor. Yeah, there is absolutely zero way that this plastic cover is going to go back on there. So we're just going to leave that off. Then, you know what? We might have to bend the tabs at the end of the battery connectors. I'm going to do that off the controller. And here's a closer look at how I ended up bending the tabs. Hopefully that creates enough clearance. If you guys are enjoying the video so far, make sure you hit that like button. Just keeps me motivated to make more videos like this for you guys. And at this point, you do have the option of disconnecting the left and right brake levers if you want to disable those for some reason, but I want to keep mine activated since I like having the brake light function. That was definitely a tight fit. So you can see we just barely fit the battery connector harness in place. See, it's almost pinched over here, but we got it in there. Obviously, if you went with a slightly lower power output battery, you wouldn't have such thick cables, so you wouldn't have an issue like this. But I'm greedy, so I went with a 25 kilowatt battery. One thing I'm not gonna have connected to anything for now is the XD60 charge port connector. Since the charger for the Amorge battery has an XD60 output, so the stock charge port on the side of the frame is not gonna function. At least on this bike, I'm gonna make it work on my other one. Wow, that's a nice fit. You know what's funny is this bigger battery has even more clearance than the stock battery. There's plenty of space under the factory bracket. And just one last thing that we got to connect is this handy dandy Bluetooth dongle for the Fardriver controller, which will just connect to this white connector that Yozma leaves accessible right at the top of the frame. And just like that. Should be able to connect to the controller. I'm going to open up the Fardriver app. All right, it's got to be this controller. All right, as I said in the previous video, this controller is already set to 80 line amps, 260 phase amps, which is actually maxed out for this specific controller, but we're going to change this to a 72 volt setup. Save. And I'm just going to leave everything else alone for now. Weak response is already at 0. Just want to take a look at the stock tune. That's pretty interesting. This might be why I feel like I'm lacking torque down low. I'm going to set these all to 100 as far as ratios and speed, all the way up to about 4,000. I don't think I've seen it taper down like that right from 1500 RPM before. Setting it to 72 volts automatically put the overvolt protection at 90.7 and low volt protection to 50 volts, which seems a little too low in my opinion. I'm going to change that to 59. Alright, so I've been messing around with the Fardriver settings and I think I found the initial tune that I'm going to try out first, which I think should increase the RPMs. Please don't ask me for tune settings because I am not a professional by any means. I'm just sharing what I'm experimenting with. All right, let's try that out. Mode 3. Okay, well, freewheeling, it's definitely already a lot faster. All right, before we take this bike out, if you're enjoying today's video so far, do me a favor and hit that like button. And if you like this kind of content, want to keep up with some of my projects, such as this Yozma IN10 Pro, or any of the other bikes in the garage, make sure you subscribe to this channel and turn your bell notification on. If you want to get more information on the Yozma IN10 Pro, I'll leave a link to their listing in the description below. You can also get yourself 5% off anything from Yozma, from their bikes to accessories and upgrades using discount code PATOutdoors.
first ride on the new Yozma i10 Pro with the 72 volt setup installed. Let's see how fast this thing actually goes with a 180-pound rider. Mode 3. Showing 55, 56 miles per hour so far, at least on the display. I'm going to turn my GPS on in just a minute. But we've only been on this bike for a few minutes now, and I can already tell that it's got so much more pickup, so much more low-end torque. All right, let's see how fast it actually goes on a GPS speedometer. I completely forgot my phone mount at home. It's still mounted on this other 72 volt bike that we're currently testing. Make sure you stay tuned for this weekend if you want to see that. Oh, come on, squirrel, what the hell? This damn truck. Well, just to give you some perspective, this bike goes 44, 45 miles per hour with me on it. I'm 180 pounds. We have that confirmed on my initial test review video. So let's see what it shows so far. Okay, so far it's 50 miles per hour. See, I really wish that this bike just came with a 72 volt option from the factory. I think this is exactly how the Yozma i10 Pro should have been. Oh my God, what is up with the squirrels today? Oh man, yeah, it's definitely got a lot more torque output than the 60 volt setup. So the main limiting factor right now as far as power is obviously the controller. If you decided to put like a Fardriver ND72300, this would definitely have a lot more torque and power overall, because at least that controller would be a direct swap. You don't even have to trim any of the plastics or anything. It's actually the same exact size as the factory controller, and you'd be able to tune it to 300 phase amps and 100 line amps continuous, which is not even half of the max capacity output of this battery, but it would pretty much be a direct swap for the stock controller. Unlike on my Moxon controller on my other Yozma i10, I had to trim a lot of the plastics and re-drill the frame to make some mounts to mount it on the front side of the frame. But then again, that bike has a Soshin FW22 motor, and we're pushing 700 line amps for now, 225 amps continuous. But when we transfer this battery to my other Yozma, we are turning things up to 300 line amps continuous and 900 phase amps. So make sure you stay tuned for the future Yozma i10 content. So the controller is definitely going to be the next step as far as an upgrade if you already have a new 72 volt battery installed. So if I were to be on a budget, I think the perfect combination would be like a Fardriver ND72300 controller with an Amorge battery, 72 volts, something with at least 150 line amps continuous output. And then at that point, you can pretty much tune the 72300 controller for 100 line amps continuous, 300 phase. And I think that'll give you the maximum output that the stock motor is able to handle. I don't really recommend putting much more power through the stock motor. Yozma, if you happen to be watching this video, please offer a 72 volt Pro option for the audience.
I have no idea what was going on with the squirrels earlier, but we're at least able to hit 50 miles per hour. Obviously, I had to slow down because there was a truck in front of me, and I probably could have leaned forward and milk it to 53 miles per hour, but I can already see that there's a limitation in power output from the stock controller only being able to put out what it can put out. So if you want to do a 72 volt setup on your Yozma i10 Pro, I highly suggest upgrading the controller at the same time to at least a ND72300, preferably a slightly bigger controller, but I know the 300 does not require any sort of trimming to mount on this frame. And that will at least allow you to gain a little bit more speed and put out over 7,000 watts of continuous power. But if you guys enjoyed today's test, do me a favor and hit that like button. And if you like this kind of content, want to keep up with some of my projects, such as this Yozma or any of the other bikes in the garage, make sure you subscribe to this channel and turn your bell notification on. But this is going to be it for today. Thank you for watching.